Good afternoon and welcome to A Crossroad in Faith. I am Nathaniel.
I'm Lily.
And this is our guest, Ricky T.
Hi there.
Today we are talking with Rick, and we're going to make this really simple. And we're going to start off, turning the music off, with some questions. So if you don't know about the podcast, in case we didn't make it clear, our goal is to talk to Christians about how they go about living in society that is not Christian friendly. Yeah. We'll ask some silly questions, we'll ask some hard questions maybe, and then we'll get to the meat and the potatoes of the question.
Sure.
So if you're up to it, I'm up to it. So we'll get started with the hardest question of all time.
Oh, no.
Who are you?
Who am I?
Yeah. So just a little brief description about who you are and
what you're up to.
Sure.
You know.
Yeah. I'm Ricky Terrio, and 59 years old. Been married for 39 of that to my wife, Cindy. Got two incredible girls, Christina and Ashley. And I'm self-employed, been self-employed for the better part of 30 years, and it keeps me going, pays the bills. I was saved in 1982, but didn't really commit my life to the Lord till 1994. Since then, just been trying to live for the Lord the best that I can most every day. Probably fail horribly most days, but, you know, I get up and just keep going. Mm-hmm. So that's a little bit about me. I guess here at Chapel of Hope, I'm on the deacon board for a second term now.
That's awesome.
Just try to... Again, just trying to go where the Lord leads me to go. Do what He lead me to do.
Yeah, He's my mediator between technology and non-technology people in the boardroom. So,
which pretty much, they're all pretty much non-technology people. So that makes it a little bit of a challenge. But the Lord has given me a gift of being able to take things that are tough to comprehend and put it in layman's terms.
Well, they get complicated. You start rattling off cables and plugs and all kinds of stuff, and people just kind of eyes glass, face droops, and they're just like,
"What are we talking about?"
Yep.
Not worried
like
about
talking to me.
Not worried about
yeah,
it.
pretty much.
Like talking to you. So, all right. So that's who you are.
Sure.
I
We'll let Lily ask the next
yeah,
question.
I was going to ask how more specifically you came to Jesus and how He found you or you found Him.
So in 1982, I was working for Wendy's of Montana as a manager trainee. I'd just basically gotten out of training, and just seemed like everything was just falling apart in my life. And we had a Baptist preacher who just graduated from Southern Baptist Seminary, and he was our cook, our main cook. And so I was working with him this one Saturday, and I said so many things were going on in my life, and had a really close friend of mine, my closest friend. He had cancer, and his cancer was just starting to return about that time. And he was really struggling, so it just really bummed me out, because he and I were closer than brothers. And so just that, and basically being kicked out of my house in a fashion for no reason at all, with my mom. I was in a real depressed state, and one day on a Saturday he comes in and he says, "Hey, you look like someone who needs Jesus." I said, "Okay." Well, being raised in the Catholic Church, I didn't know anything about that. Yeah. I mean, really, they talk about Jesus, but they don't talk about a relationship with Him. Right. And so he led me in a sinner's prayer real quick, and I just felt something totally change. But I went to tell all my friends, my family, everybody else, man, I gave my life to Jesus. And like my mom reaches over, taps me on the arm, says, "That's nice, honey." I was like, "Don't you get it?
It's a big deal.
Don't you get it?" Yeah. And nobody around me really knew what it was to walk with the Lord. So I pretty much was just kind of in and out for about 12 years. And the Lord just really hounded me. After about 12 years, he was like, why won't you just give me your life? Kept asking. I kept hearing this, and I'm like, no real reason. And then one day I heard that, and I'm watching, and it was a Save the Children advertisement. And I said, because you'll send me there. And my wife will want to divorce me. He was like, why would I have your wife divorce you? Because I created marriage. And then why would I send you somewhere where it's never been laid on your heart to do? Just give me your life. And I was like, don't think I can. And it was weird how having conversations with the Lord, but never really committing my life.
Yeah.
And then I was full of rage at that time. And a really good friend of mine was really messing with me one day, and I actually almost killed him out of that rage, and caused me to crawl out of bed the next morning and went, I don't want to be this guy.
Yeah.
And said, I don't know what it is to serve you, Lord, but if you showed me every day, that's what I'll do. So, since 1994, about May of 1994. So,
That's incredible.
Maybe we
Yep.
should switch. It's gonna be a little happier in here.
just, well,
Oh, I knew it was going to.
it
It's
means,
emotional.
I know
mean,
Rick's
it
heart,
is.
so I knew this was going to be a hard one. But we'll switch to a
Sure.
really unusual, goofy one. Okay.
Okay.
If God was a genie and he could grant you one wish, and it has to be a selfish wish, you're not allowed to wish for world peace or end of hunger. It has to be something that Rick wants, whether it's for his family, his kids, or whatever. It has to be something that Rick wants from his heart, not something that God wants. What would that wish be?
Wow. That's tough. It's really hard to think of what I would want.
It's hard to be selfish.
It is.
As Christians, we try very hard not to be selfish.
Yeah.
And that's why this is such a silly question,
Yeah.
and it throws people off. Be like, well, but I want to wish for happiness in the world and peace and hunger. Those things would be great. They would make the world. Yeah,
Yeah.
but what do you want? Enough money that your kids never have to worry about struggling in the future?
No. Actually, I don't
know?
see that as a benefit. It's the struggles that really make us who we are in Christ.
Yeah.
I found that out. You know, as much as I don't want to struggle, I've learned to embrace that struggle, regardless of what it is. And I'm still, I don't really want to do that. But I guess,
A clone.
wow.
Because we need like three
You know,
of you.
I really, that is really kind of what I was thinking. I wish I had a twin or a clone, maybe two clones.
Couple of clones. You need the house clone, the
yep.
church clone, and the work clone.
Yeah. And then all three of us would have to join in pretty much every time I turned around.
You'd have to have a
Yep.
conference meeting every morning. Okay, this is what catch up.
That
with it.
really, you know, I mean, if there was something, and I was kind of thinking that, so that you said that, it's like, yeah, that's
wow.
almost prophetic. You know me well enough to know that's pretty much what we've even talked a little bit about that.
Yeah. there's-
Because I do feel overwhelmed at times. So
A lot to do.
just a lot to do, you
Yeah.
know, and when the Lord has blessed you to be able to do just about anything,
yeah.
you know, it's incredible to have that, but at the same time, it can be overwhelming. So, yeah.
I would agree.
Very good question.
Yep.
Answer.
Yeah. Well, thanks. Tough question, though.
Tough question.
I don't know if
Everybody
they get
wants-
any.
Everybody wants to be so serious about it. I'm like,
Yeah.
the whole point of it is not to be serious. We know God's not a genie and he doesn't grant wishes.
Yeah.
But if he was, you know,
Well, here I got an easier question.
Okay.
If he asked you to create a new animal, what two animals would you combine to make a new animal? And what would you name it? If you were in charge. If he was like,
Wow.
Rick, I need you to create a new species. They're bored down there. They need something new to go after.
Boy. Adam had a tough job trying to name animals. He didn't have to. I mean,
He didn't
I
have to
thought it was a
create 'em.
tough.
Yeah.
He didn't
Yeah.
create them.
Nope.
You know, I kind of leave that to God.
yeah, but he's busy too. He's got a couple billion people.
I think, you know,
Take care of it.
maybe a cheetah and an elephant.
Oh, wow.
So because cheetahs are super fast,
Mm-hmm.
and elephants are actually very helpful to humans.
They are.
and you would want to speed the process up. You know,
So is it a skinny, fast elephant or a slow
cheetah fint. It's a
fat
cheetah fint.
cheetah?
I think it would have to be the size of the elephant, but with a lot more speed.
That's kind of scary. Elephants, when they get going, they
Pretty fast on their own.
plow everything.
Well, you know, I'm just thinking about like work and
60
stuff. you know,
mile an
but
hour
I
elephant.
think it would be kind of cool. And then on top of it, you know, if there's anything trying to eat them, I mean, if you know,
You're gone.
Yeah.
It'd be
Yeah.
the top predator.
yeah,
Not
they
predator,
would be.
prey.
wow.
Don't get in that elephant's
Well,
way.
but elephants, you know, they aren't carnivorous.
No.
So that I'd maybe take the best of both worlds. But
Put 'em
yeah,
into
I just thought, wow, that's kind of a weird combination, but that's all I could come up with.
Right on the spot. Yeah.
A cheetah and an elephant.
It's pretty good.
Yeah.
If you're right on the spot, put you there.
I like that. I like
Hey, you know, you
that.
guys are throwing out tough questions. I'm going to give some bizarre answers.
That's what we want.
This is just supposed to be fun. It's supposed to
Sure.
just be a conversation.
It is.
That's all I'm looking for.
Yeah.
Have you experienced a life-changing or belief-changing experience that has altered the way you see the world?
Ask me tough questions. Yeah. (2009), Cindy got pregnant. And after a few weeks, she basically, her water broke, and she's in the bathroom saying, "Help me." What, you know, and all I could do was I got really angry. I looked up at God and said, you know, this is a cruel joke. We'd waited 21 years for another child. And I just stepped back and I just started hitting the wall, and I just punched a hole in the wall. Seriously, it was about that big, because I just kept hitting it, And I finally realized at that point, because I just was praying, why would you do something like this, God? It's not God's plan. It's He showed me the scriptures that says, through one man sin entered the world, and through sin death. And everything that came after that, what was, you know, the evil and everything, it was our sin. So I started looking at things when people say, well, why does God allow these things to happen? Well, free will, and we all have free will,
Yeah.
and we've all participated in sin. So I'm no less guilty than someone else who has, maybe raped someone or done something horrific. My sin is no less. It doesn't matter how small it is. And so when I realized all of a sudden it's sin that has caused all this pain, and it's not God's will. God didn't take my little girl. She was taken, but He had a place for her to go.
Yeah.
You know, so that's I think that's a big worldview change for me, where I used to blame God for everything, and I don't blame Him for everything. He's given us a way out of that pain. So
Some.
keep making me cry,
I
guys.
know,
Go
I'm
ahead.
sorry.
It's all right.
You
It's not
know,
your fault.
it's sometimes the things that change us the most and change how we look at things are the things that hurt us the most.
Yep.
Most people that I have known through my life, their growth has always come through pain.
Oh,
It
always.
has to.
And I think it's not that God designed us to grow through pain. He probably doesn't want us to suffer at all. But we've made the choices in our life where now pain is a part of it.
Yep.
Or at least our ancestors made the choices.
Sure.
I've made plenty of choices in my life where pain has been the outcome, and I hope that I've learned from it.
Yeah.
But I feel like God allows us, because He could take it away.
Sure.
God could snap His fingers and we would never have suffering again.
Yep.
But what would we learn and how would we grow to need God if we didn't have suffering? And if it wasn't for the hardships that we go through, we would never see the glory that God brings upon our lives.
Yeah.
I know that after Lily and Luke were born, we lost another one. And that was a really hard moment. And lots of anger and questioning. Well,
Yep.
why would you give it to us if you're just going to take it away?
Yep.
Why put us through weeks of joy and excitement
Yep.
to then have a lifetime of sadness?
Yeah.
And I don't know his plans. I don't know his purpose. I don't know why. But that hardship made me focus more on the blessings that he does give me.
Yep.
You know, a beautiful daughter who's
Yep.
super smart. My son who is outrageously smart and charming and the opposite of everything God gave me. He's outspoken. He's great with people.
Sure.
He's at our wedding this last weekend, like the way he handles kids, deals with kids, like the house we did our wedding at, they just had brand new carpet installed and we had red punch. And
It was a Korean carpet too.
the owner of the house said one time,
Yep.
just kind of in joking,
Yep.
no juice on the carpet.
Yep.
Pretty please.
And my son heard that. And
Yeah.
then the kids, my wife's sister has some littler ones. Every time they'd get juice, my son would go up to him, hey, let's not bring that onto the carpet. Let's
Sure.
drink it over here. Like
Yeah.
all those things
Yeah.
that I see now as blessings,
Yeah.
I may not have noticed if it wasn't for the struggles that
Sure.
I went through
Yeah.
to get to that point.
Yep.
So
Yep.
I believe God uses our heartache in a way to show us the glory that's around us that we may not pay
Sure.
attention if we have it so good.
No, I agree. I agree wholeheartedly with that.
But let's get to the main point of
Sure.
this. She's got the question.
I do.
And this is the main purpose of the podcast is to find out how Christians live. So
Sure.
Yeah.
you ask the question.
And I know it's different for you because you don't work like for somebody
Yep.
else. So it's not quite the same because you could, I suppose, technically revolve your business around Christian based. Do you do that, or is it just strictly I'm here to do a job?
No. The amazing thing is, being a handyman, you get to go into people's most intimate parts of their homes.
Yeah.
Usually their bedrooms, their bathrooms,
Mm-hmm.
where, I mean, that's the private areas. And the Lord allows me to pray through those areas, which I usually do. And I don't make it a center point of my business that, hey, I'm a Christian, you should do business with me.
Right.
I just go do what the Lord will have me do. And at some point in pretty much every job I've ever done, maybe there's been one through the years where I wasn't able to use the scripture, but usually in a conversation I'll get to bring up, well, you know, the Bible says,
Yeah.
and
That's
just
cool.
whatever it is. And sometimes that really dives into deeper conversations, even with people who don't follow Jesus.
Yeah.
And it hasn't been about trying to convert anybody. It's been about just sharing
Yeah.
my faith walk.
You just
So yeah, I don't make it a focal point of my business, but
Yeah.
most of the time when I go in and do that, and people find out that I am trying to walk with the Lord and try to be the man of integrity that the Scripture calls me to be, because it says, work as though you work unto the Lord, because you do. And so everything that I do, I try to approach it that way. So yeah, and when they find that out, most people go, oh, okay, and they'll ask me back.
Yeah.
So I get a lot of repeat business.
Well, that's good.
Yeah.
How do you deal with anger and frustration? Because even as a Christian, we get angry, we get frustrated. You are working on a project. I know we've had this just here at the church, working on a project, and the church is an illusion. People think because you work at a church that you're always upbeat and happy
Yeah.
and positive and stuff like that. Me and you both know we've put enough blood, sweat, and tears into this building just in the last year
Yeah.
that things don't work out right and you kind of just want to scream. How do you
If
where do you focus that the desire to have anger, but not have the anger,
Yeah.
How
Not
do-
express it
not express
in
the
an
anger
inappropriate way.
in an inappropriate.
Because you and I
way.
have talked a couple of times. Man, this is so frustrating.
It is.
And just make a statement like that. I do what David showed us to do. I really take it to the Lord and just say, okay, I don't get this. I'm really frustrated. It's 10 o'clock at night,
Yeah.
11 o'clock at night, and I really would like to go home. And why is this so hard? And what usually, when I ask those questions, scripture comes up, If you're going to share in his glory, you must also share in his sufferings. And that includes the frustrations, the anger, the challenges. And the Lord has been teaching me for years now, just do the next thing that's in front of you. Whatever and so when I get angry, it's because I want like the entire day to be done. And I get frustrated when it's taking longer. So he'll usually bring me back to focus on what is the next thing that you need to do. Just the very next little thing. It could be one little thing. Put a screw in and screw it down. And when I start doing that, all of a sudden the anger and the frustration disappears.
Nice. One
So-
thing at a time.
Yeah, because I'm not looking at the entirety of the project and the frustration of trying to get it done. I'm just focusing on the next simple thing. And it's a simple little task. I get it done. And all of a sudden I feel a little better. Okay, I got that one. Move to the next one. And if it's each little screw, all of a sudden you're just like, oh, and look at what I just got done. You look back and go, wow, okay, things weren't going well. But that's probably because I was focused on the entirety of the project. And so that's what I do even pretty much every day. I have a lot of frustrations and a lot of challenges almost every day, but I find after years of experience of doing this, I don't become as upset as I used to. And I'm a lot quicker to go, okay, it's just another challenge. It's another hurdle. And that's what I usually say. It's another hurdle, and life's full of hurdles all throughout the day.
Yeah.
That's one of my personal goals that I've tried to do this year, and being newly married. And last week Pastor talked about grumbling,
Yeah.
and she was easily pointed out that I like to grumble, especially here at church.
He loves to grumble.
I do love to grumble.
Maybe not love, but
Yep.
he loves to do it all the time.
I hate that I like to grumble.
Yep.
Well,
And hate's a strong word, and I don't hate a lot of things, but
Yep.
I hate that my personal struggle is grumbling about things here at church.
Sure.
And in my own mind, like I was talking with you earlier about, my own mind is that if you're making a commitment to the church,
Yep.
why can't you fulfill that commitment? Why is somebody else having to step up?
Yeah.
Like, I get it, everybody needs a break or whatever,
Yep.
but when you ask to take on a task, but then you don't take on that task and somebody else has to take over for it, it bothers me,
Yeah.
especially in a church. And I have the same grumblings about our worship team.
Yep.
And I've talked with Diane, I've talked with Tamara, and it's always the same answer: is the worship team is not a place to be if you want to sing.
Yep.
It's just not. The worship team is a place where you want to come and worship God,
Yep.
and you want to lead other people to worship God, and that should be the only reason you're there.
Yeah.
And when people don't take that commitment, for whatever reason it is, and they just don't take that commitment, not only are they not valuing our time and the church's time and everything, you're also not valuing God's time, and you're not honoring God. And so my goal this year is to not grumble.
Sure.
And I'm going to fail a lot, because I do it all the time. But it's not just here at church. It's in my personal life too, outside of church and stuff. But I'm really wanting to get better at it. And the way I get better at it is when people call me on it.
Sure.
And so when Crystal calls me on it, she's, saying, hey, you were grumbling quite a bit. And
Yeah.
like, you're right, I was. And I can reflect on that, and I look back on that, and going to God with the problem instead of grumbling is what's going to help. And focusing more on what's the issue, God? Why am I grumbling? You know, what is it really that's causing me to grumble and complain about this? And that's a big focus of mine. And
One of the things that the Lord showed me a long time ago, and I still struggle with, is not to have expectations of people. At one point, the Lord spoke to me. I know He spoke this. He said, when you have expectations of other people, expectations, I'm expecting them to respond or do things a certain way. I'm trying to recreate them in my image.
right.
Rather than receiving, okay, God, they're not created the same way that I am. They're created in your image. And maybe I need to see that reflection of you somehow in them. And, you know, that's actually really easy for me to do for people outside my family. But the people within my family, it's really a challenge for me to do that and say, you know, okay, they're not the same way that I am. And that I have expectations of them. I'm basically idolizing myself. That's what the Lord brought as a conviction into my life. Whether that helps or not, it really spoke to me. So when I would start getting upset with people, all of a sudden I'd be like, oh, okay, they're not created the same way I am. And what can I see in them that is really, you know, part of God and His character? It did really start helping me to just accept people just the way that they are.
And I think I'm also way more judgmental of people in the church than I am outside of the church. You get used to this idea that people in the church, they're not necessarily better, but you get surrounded by such great people like you and Rick and Tamara and stuff. And you guys really set the bar a lot higher. And all this growing up in the church, you see all these people that are coming to church and they're consistent and they're volunteering, they're helping. And then when I get somebody that volunteers for something but then doesn't show up, it really kind of hits me that not everybody is at the same level
No.
or at the same standard. And some people view things differently based on their own
Yep.
relationship with God, a relationship with the church, or whatever it is. And I shouldn't have the same expectation that I have for myself on other people.
No,
So-
really. And that again, because then we're trying to recreate people in our image.
Yeah.
Right.
We don't need to do that.
And that's a hard thing.
They have their own image,
That's right.
and God has their own image of them. It's a lot of imaging.
Yep, there is. But we are created in God's image.
That's all that matters.
And that means we need to discover the good points that God created them with. We always tend to focus on people's bad points.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that's just so it takes the blame off of me and the guilt off of me and the shame off of me for
Well, it
how
makes us feel better.
my shortcomings. Oh, yeah.
It makes you feel better.
Definitely.
If I can see the bad things that you did, it makes me feel a little bit better about the bad things I did.
Yeah.
Even though I rarely ever see any bad things that you do, because you're a pretty great guy. And
Thank you. There's plenty. Plenty.
there are. And that's a struggle with being a Christian as well.
It is.
Is when you have family and friends that aren't Christians,
Yep.
and you spend so much time involved with the church.
Yeah.
Same with me. Like, your non-Christian family and friends see it as a negative.
Yep.
Oh, well, you're just always at the church.
Yep.
Yeah.
You're always up there working on a wiring or something. You can't come over and fix my stuff, but you can spend 87 hours at the church.
Yeah.
People see being a Christian as a negative,
Yeah.
where we see being Christians as the only positive thing in our life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because outside of church and outside of my Christian friends and a handful of other people, my life's got a lot of negativity in it.
Sure.
Because somebody wants something.
Yep.
Somebody always needs something.
Yep.
and they're always upset if I can't deliver. And I've struggled my entire life with that whole letting people down thing,
Yep.
and that's been a struggle over the last 10 years or so of learning to let that go.
Sure.
But when you spend as much time in a church and around a bunch of God-fearing people, your attitude is so much different. But then when you walk out the church, you're immediately hit with that
Reality.
negativity again. Yeah.
Reality.
It's-
So it's super difficult,
Sure.
and we could talk about that forever.
Yep.
But we'll ask a couple more fun questions,
Sure.
and then we'll probably wrap it up.
Sure.
We're at about a half hour now. I've got a good one for you
Okay.
because you're a musician.
Sure.
You're a worship leader. What is your current favorite Christian song that you're listening to, and what is your all-time favorite? If you have an all-time
if
favorite,
they're different
Wow.
if they're different.
to choose from millions and
Um,
millions of songs.
I know there's so
Narrowed down
many
to
songs.
one.
Like it could be something we sing. If you have a favorite worship song that we currently sing in the
I
church,
probably lean towards Jeremy Camp for almost everything for
he's
worship
really
music.
good.
My voice fits his style of music. There's a lot of the worship songs that I did do. Chris Tomlin was another one. And it'd probably be that there's several Jeremy Camp songs that I think are my favorite. And really, I mean, I don't really have a favorite song. I just don't. It's whatever the Lord is leading me to at that moment. I will listen to a song if I'm getting ready to do it. Sometimes I'll listen to a song 100 times back to back to back, just over and over and over again,
Yeah.
because I want to get into the worship of that song. To worship the Lord in that song. I don't want to learn how to sing it. I want to learn how to worship the Lord. So
I know my personal favorite that our church does is the one that Brandon sang today. I love it, and it's in my head
Yeah.
every day, all day. And then when he sings it, it just, I don't
Yep.
know, it's so beautiful and it hits me.
I think my favorite song is whatever that is at the moment that I'm worshiping the Lord in.
Yeah.
I really don't have a
Whichever
favorite
one.
song.
Whichever one touches you at
Yep.
that time.
At that moment. At that moment.
I
So yeah,
know-
I don't have one.
The one that always ruins me, brings me just to tears, even if it's internal tears, is can't think of the name of the song. It's "I'm a Child of God."
Oh.
Yeah.
Yep. Yep. I'm a child of God. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yep.
but
You're not going to believe this. I'm
It-
going to have to use the bathroom.
oh no,
Oh, man.
oh no,
Oh, yeah.
It's a good thing we're almost done.
Yep.
it's a good thing we're
No,
almost.
I mean, like,
oh. Well, if you need to go,
I'm going to have to. Can you edit?
You
we
just
pause it?
go ahead and go, and we can
Sorry.
we can
all right.
pause it here.
It just, hey, I have a back issue.
It hits.
When it's not like it always hurts, but when it keeps my bladder in
It's okay. We'll just play crickets while you're gone, so that people know that you're missing.
It's all right.
Oh my goodness. Well, while we wait for him, I don't know. What did we talk about?
Talk about yourself.
Never had a guest walk out on me
Well, I've
before.
only ever had 2 guests before.
That's
so
true. That's true.
Sometimes you just, nature calls.
Nature
Same way
does
God does.
call. Wow. That's deep.
Mm.
Well, do we ask him another serious question, or do we end on something fun? Well, you get the ending question, so I guess you got to pick what you want to end with.
I have to pay.
You have to pick. Oh man,
I don't want to make him emotional again. I
make
feel
him
bad.
cry.
People tend to get emotional when they talk about this. It's a very deep part of their being. It's who they,
They
are.
do. They do.
I do.
Our
I cry when I hear other people talk about their stories. It always makes me
I
teary-eyed.
know, and I knew Rick was gonna be fun, so hopefully he enjoys this. Next, it's one of those things.
Well, that's because you thought it. You brought it up, and that's what happens.
I mean,
It's not that big a
It's
deal.
it's okay. It's no big deal. We just made fun of you the whole time.
well,
were
you know what?
gone.
If you're making fun of me, you're not making fun of someone else.
That's cool.
All right.
So we're gonna end with one more question, and she
Okay.
gets to pick whatever it is. So I don't know if it's gonna be
Sure.
serious or fun.
It's
If you're gonna
be
cry or what's
no
gonna
more
happen.
tears.
Oh.
'Cause when people cry, I cry. So we're
Yeah,
not
but those
gonna-
tears can be really cleansing and helpful.
They are.
Yeah.
I don't like it's crying at all. Period. I hate crying. I just, I grew up with the Bible, and I just love all the cool stories. So I want to know if you could go back and live through any of the stories, any of the miracles, and witness it. What would it be?
There was a lot of different ones. I think in the Old Testament, I just was always fascinated with that. I did research on my background, my genealogy, and it ends with on my dad's side with my great grandfather. Can't find out where he was born or anything. And I mean, I spent hundreds of hours researching, trying to find something, but I had a couple of them probably with David, and I was really that became my story, the Old Testament, Abraham, Isaac, Jacob. I mean, because I don't have a genealogy to look back on, and so I believe the Lord gave me that years ago when I was like, okay, why can't I find out anything more about this? The Lord said, you have a story. So the Old Testament was always it, but after watching The Chosen, and doing study, trying to take the scripture out of that and discuss that, just being with Jesus while he walked on this earth, I can't imagine anything better. I mean, but to see how they may have interacted and everything at times, it's like, would it be any different than what we're living in now with our families?
Yeah.
I mean, where we battle at times, we encourage at times, we put each other down. I mean, we pick on each other.
Unfortunately.
It really has changed my thinking doing this study with The Chosen, and just kind of going, because they focus on the disciples, not on Jesus.
Yeah.
They it's about their humanity, and it's like, oh. So at one point I thought, there was no way I could have envisioned, because these were the disciples. And when you kind of get an idea of, well, they were nothing but humans like we are, all of a sudden it seemed a lot more intriguing to me to go back and spend time with Jesus and the disciples at that time, just to be around them and see what they really were like. So I look forward to that. One day when we go to heaven, we get to go,
Can you imagine the conversations? Like, you just
Yep.
walk up to David.
Yep.
You're like,
Yep.
so, let's hear it. What was he really like?
Yeah.
I think one of my favorite Bible stories and miracles, if I could go back and see one, would be the feeding of the 5,000. Just that this much food fed this much people.
Yep.
Like, just that miracle, the never-ending feast would just be a miracle that is, it's one of those things where it's a physical thing. You can see it happening.
Yeah.
Or like raising somebody from the dead. Like, there's all kinds of miracles of healing people.
Yeah.
But like, when you can see they had this much bread and this much fish, but yet there was so many people that it was unfathomable to feed them.
Yep.
But yet they all got a healthy feeding. Just it'd be so cool to see.
And I also think
Jesus walking on water.
David, David and the
Goliath.
Goliath. That, to actually see that in action. That's always, again, going back to, the Old Testament, that was probably one of my favorite stories that when I first read it, it was like,
It's a cool
that is
story.
so cool. Him, the Toolman Taylor. Yeah, that's a real man. Love Tim, the Toolman Taylor. But, just because it was always about that, the masculine side, trying to bring out the masculine side. And David, being as, it says he was slight and ruddy, so he was a small guy. He was shortest in his family. and to see the courage and the strength that he exuded all of his life, being someone of smaller stature. You know, I grew up, when I was a child, I was very small. And it wasn't until my junior year in high school I finally sprouted.
Yeah.
But I was picked on a lot. And so reading that about David, I actually relate more to him than
Yeah.
probably almost anybody else in the Bible, just because of my experiences when I was younger.
Yeah.
I'm not that way anymore. You know, I'm not small, and, you know,
I was gonna say I like you're taller than anybody else here, so.
yep. Yeah. Well, but at one time, I mean, I was a very slight individual. I was strong, but I was just skinny. But
Sounds like Luke.
yeah,
Yeah.
you know, but when you take a guy who's, you know, bigger than me back in high school, and I was a freshman or sophomore, and this one guy, we'd get on the bus and he'd just come up and he'd just grab me by the shirt and he would just drive his fist into my chest, and, you know, just always doing stuff like that. And I learned early on, if you say things to people, especially snotty comments, you know, to a bully, he's just going to pound you.
Yeah.
And so I did. I got pounded a couple of times and finally decided, nah, I wouldn't do that anymore. So, but yeah, so relating to David.
Well, I think that's gonna do it. I
Cool.
could probably sit here and talk to you forever, but your
Yeah.
wife would be upset.
Yep.
My wife would be upset because I still gotta drive 2 hours,
Well, this has been
and I gotta go all the way to 86th Street out to my storage unit before I do that. So
it's been a challenging conversation because you hit some nerves that have the same response every time I tell.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
keep thinking one of these days, you know, I'm not going to respond like that, but committing my life to the Lord.
well, it's
Most impactful thing
yeah,
I ever
it-
did.
It is the most life-changing thing you
It
can
is.
ever do.
And it
And-
means so much.
Yeah.
That
like-
and you know, again, the second thing I will say is probably when we lost Hannah, you know, at that in 2009. That two of the most life-changing things, because one, I came out of that rage and where I probably could have killed someone and not even thought about it.
yeah.
And the Lord brought me out of that, and then getting me through, you know, the next major challenge of my life, and that was trying to get beyond blaming God for everything. You know, because growing up in the Catholic Church, God was this big mean kid sitting in the sky, God the Father, not Jesus, God the Father, and he had a magnifying glass, and I was an ant.
Yep.
And he's just, oh, look, I'm going to burn you. I'm going to do this. So it was trying to get out of that perspective. And so, yeah, those two things, like I say, anytime I even think about it, I'll go throughout the day and all of a sudden I'll think about one of those times. And it just brings tears to my eyes because I've had those major changes in my life. And I'm so happy that I'm not, you know, the same person I used to be. And yeah, I still struggle with anger, and I struggle with a lot of doubt, and even moments where it's like, really? Never mind, it's not you. Because sometimes that's my first reaction, you know, it's like, but
Yeah.
I find myself not reacting as much as I used to. So,
Good. Well, I think that's going to end it for us. We'll add some clapping here at the end just for fun. I like all these buttons. But I want to say thanks, Rick, for joining us. Thanks, Lily, for hosting with
Thanks,
me
you guys.
again. And this has been Walking with Christians, a crossroad of faith. We'll see you guys next time.
Yeah.